Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Sprocket Community Steel video. This is episode 27, folks. 27 episodes so far of Community Steel. How about that? This whole thing is, like I keep telling people, this has gotten further than I thought it would. But let's kick off today's episode with the Panzer IV-L from Ashter. He also has another variant of the Panzer IV-K, which has more of a Panzer IV-H turret with this hull. This was actually a German paper tank. This was a proposed upgrade program for the Panzer IV to give it more combat performance, something closer to what the Panther had at the time. This is armed with the 75mm main gun, and it does have 103mm of penetration. It weighs in at 23 tons. This is actually for the mid-war period. Now, I get it a little bit stuck here, but I do get it free. That being said, this actually does have some decent mobility to it. And the armor performs, well, it performs okay. I mean, having the front plate angled really does help the Panzer IV, but it's still not well armored. I don't even believe this has as much armor as even the upper glacis plate of the Panther. But still, cool vehicle. The next vehicle here is the Low, which translates as lion, and this is from Vladislav. This weighs in at 77.5 tons, and it has the 105mm main gun, and it is meant for the late war period. And it actually does look like a Low. It looks like a 1-to-1. I'm not sure about the weight range. I think it is a bit heavy. I thought the Low was only about 60 or 65 tons. No matter what, it's still a pretty massive tank, and it does bounce shots like a tank, like a champ, and that's got to do with its rounded turret and its very thick upper glacis plate. The one problem this vehicle has is the reload is ridiculously long, like 15 seconds. That's a long reload, especially when you're getting barreled down by multiple tanks, which, yeah, that's about what's going to happen here. The vehicle does actually fine when engaged from the front, but start having a bit of issues when you start getting shot in the rear and the sides. Pretty typical for a heavy tank of the time. Mobility is meh, but it is a heavy tank, so it's not meant to break land speed records. It's meant to take shots like a champ, and it does that very well until you get shot in the side. Let's move on to the next vehicle, and this is the Lynx Mark 1 from Canadian Jesus, and it weighs in at 28 tons, and it has a 105mm main gun, and this is for the mid-war period. This is kind of in the middle of, it is a medium tank, but there's some things to me that makes it feel like a light tank. I like how he utilized the actual tires for the suspension, the Lorraine suspension, if you will, for his design. And the armor is actually quite effective. I don't believe it's actually thick. I believe it's actually just effective. And the gun is actually quite effective as well when I actually get some good shots, except for I tend to throw some shitty shots at times. But as you can see here, the upper glacis plate is just bouncing shots like a champ. It's also got twin machine guns over the 50 cal machine guns over the main gun. So that's kind of interesting in itself. Point that thing straight up in the air and maybe shoot down some aircraft. The next vehicle here is the Fitchell 2A from German Train. And, well, this reminds me a lot of actually the Panzer III. But it weighs in at 17.81 tons. It's got a 58mm main gun with 146.4mm of penetration, and it is meant for the mid-war period. Armor-wise, it's nothing to write home to mom about. I would never bet on this thing's armor. That being said, it's actually got some really good mobility, although 17 tons and gravity does not go together, as you find out here. And yeah, I pretty much get it stuck here. I was really hoping to do some Dukes of Hazzard stuff there for you, but it just did not work out for me. That being said, it is nice to see German Train making some actual tanks instead of oddball vehicles. The next vehicle is the Concept 125 by T-Rex 2040. And this is a 62-ton main battle tank with a 125 millimeter main gun. It's got 191.3 millimeters of penetration. It's got slow acceleration, but once it gets up to speed, it really gets going. And it is for the mid-war period. I'm not too sure why he did this as mid-war. This definitely looks, honestly, it looks like an M8 Thunderbolt from Armored Warfare, which is quite interesting in itself, the way the turret's laid out and the hull and everything else. It's very familiar to the M8. And that being said, this tank would actually be pretty effective, especially that turret. I'm pretty sure that turret would bounce just about anything. The one problem he might have, though, is shots going in between the turret and the hull. That is definitely a solid shot trap. Of course, that would be luck or a really close engagement, so take it for what it is. And the final vehicle for today's Community Steel is the Czechoslovakian VC-55 from Staler 18, and this weighs in at 54.54 tons. It is armed with a 130 millimeter main gun with 205 millimeters of penetration, and the armor is very effective on this vehicle. It's all sharp angles and rounded areas. And I do want to point out some things that I'm not sure if you'll get a good look at it here soon, but what's interesting is on the turret he has these two large bulges on each side of the main gun, and that really reminds me of the composite add-on armor for the T-55 AM. So I thought that was actually really cool. That being said, the armor's effective, the mobility is actually rather good. It feels like a more modernized main battle tank over a World War II type vehicle, even though he has this set for the late war period. Of course, we can't set vehicles for Cold War yet, can we? Now, I do have a bit of a problem here, as I think one problem I'm having is I am actually over-penetrating the vehicles I was shooting at. I'm not sure. But there we go, folks. There it is. Another episode of Community Steel Down. Hopefully you all enjoyed this one, and hopefully you all tune in for my next one. Thank you very much for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.